Veteran and his dog, decorated for Christmas until the basement revealed secret, hidden for decades. You're about to discover an extraordinary Christmas story that will leave you speechless. This is a tale of a veteran, his loyal dog, and a basement that held a secret for over 40 years. What they found while decorating for Christmas changed not just their lives, but an entire community's understanding of history and heroism. Before we unveil this incredible journey, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when the past refuses to stay buried. The first snow of December fell gently on Plattsburgh, New York, dusting the small city near Lake Champlain with a pristine white coating that made everything look like a Christmas card. Tom Bradley stood at the window of his Victorian house on Margaret Street, watching the flakes drift past the streetlight. His golden retriever, Sergeant, pressed against his leg, sensing the contemplative mood that often overtook his owner during the holidays. Tom had bought the 1918 Victorian 2 years ago, after returning from his final deployment to Iraq. 25 years in the army had left him with a medical discharge, a Purple Heart, a traumatic brain injury that still caused crushing headaches, and a desperate need for peace. Plattsburgh, with its military history dating back to the War of 1812, had seemed like the perfect place for a veteran to find that peace. Close enough to the VA hospital in Albany, quiet enough to heal, historical enough to feel connected to something larger than his own service. The house had been a foreclosure, sitting empty for 3 years after its previous owner. An elderly woman named Iris Hartley had died without heirs. Tom had gotten it for a fraction of its value, though it needed work. He'd spent the past 2 years slowly renovating, finding solace in the methodical work of restoration. Sand, prime, paint, repeat. It was like the army: procedure, protocol, purpose. Sergeant, a trained service dog who'd been with Tom for 4 years, had his own routine in the house. The 5-year-old golden retriever could sense Tom's TBI episodes before they fully manifested, would guide him to a safe place to sit, would fetch his medication if needed. But more than that, Sergeant was Tom's anchor to the present, when his mind tried to drift back to Fallujah, to the IED that had changed everything. This December was different, though. For the first time since buying the house, Tom felt ready to properly celebrate Christmas. His sister Kate was coming from Boston with her 2 kids. His VA therapy group had made remarkable progress. The headaches were less frequent. Maybe it was time to stop just surviving and start living. "What do you think, Sarge?" Tom asked, running his hand through the dog's golden fur. "Ready to make this place look like Christmas?" Sergeant's tail wagged enthusiastically, as if he understood. Tom had noticed the dog seemed to comprehend far more than should be possible, but then again, Sergeant had always been special. The dog had an uncanny ability to find things, not just trained behaviors like locating Tom's medication or phone, but random objects that Tom didn't even know he was looking for. Tom started with the exterior, stringing lights along the Victorians' ornate gingerbread trim. The house was painted in historical colors, sage green with cream and burgundy accents, and the white lights made it glow like something from a Dickens novel. Neighbors stopped to compliment the display, many mentioning how nice it was to see the old Hartley place coming back to life. "Mrs. Hartley would have loved this," said Robert Chen, who lived 2 houses down. "She always decorated extensively for Christmas. The whole neighborhood would come to see her displays." Tom filed that information away, feeling a strange connection to the woman who'd lived here before him. He'd found traces of her throughout the house, a forgotten photo album in the attic, gardening tools in the shed with IH carved into the handles, even a recipe box in the kitchen with handwritten cards dating back to the 1960s. Moving inside, Tom decorated the main floor with garland and ribbons. Sergeant followed, occasionally sniffing at boxes of ornaments Tom had bought from the local antique shop. The living room's bay window got a small tree, visible from the street. The dining room received candlesticks and a centerpiece. The Victorian details, crown molding, carved banisters, built-in cabinets, seemed designed for Christmas decoration. It was when Tom decided to check the basement for additional storage space that everything changed. The basement had been his least favorite part of the house. It was unfinished, with stone walls dating to the home's original construction, and it triggered something primal in his military-trained mind. Too many corners, too many shadows, too much like the underground bunkers in Iraq. But he needed to see if there were any Christmas decorations left from Mrs. Hartley's time, and the basement was the only place he hadn't thoroughly searched. Sergeant followed him down the wooden stairs, the dog's nails clicking on each step. Tom pulled the string for the single bulb that illuminated the main area, casting harsh shadows across the stone walls. The basement was mostly empty, except for an old coal bin from when the house had coal heat, some wooden shelving that held paint cans from Tom's renovations, and a workbench that looked original to the house. Tom was about to head back upstairs when Sergeant began acting strangely. The dog moved to the far corner of the basement, near what looked like a solid stone wall, and began pawing at the floor. He whined, looked back at Tom, then pawed again. This wasn't normal behavior. This was Sergeant in full alert mode, the way he acted when he sensed something important. "What is it, boy?" Tom approached, pulling out his phone's flashlight for better illumination. The corner looked unremarkable. Stone wall meeting concrete floor, some cobwebs, decades of dust. But Sergeant was insistent, now scratching at the wall itself. Tom ran his hands along the stones, feeling for anything unusual. His fingers found a slight gap, a place where the mortar wasn't quite flush. He pressed and felt the slightest give. Heart racing with a mixture of excitement and his ever-present hypervigilance, Tom pressed harder. A section of the wall, about 3 feet wide and 6 feet tall, swung inward on hidden hinges. It was a door, disguised to look like part of the stone wall. Beyond was darkness that his phone's light couldn't fully penetrate. Tom's military training kicked in. He went upstairs, retrieved a proper flashlight and his sidearm, old habits died hard, and returned. Sergeant waited patiently by the hidden door, tail wagging with anticipation. The hidden space was a small room, maybe 8 feet by 10 feet. The walls were stone like the rest of the basement, but these had wooden shelves built into them, and on those shelves were boxes, dozens of them, covered in decades of dust. In the center of the room was an old military footlocker with U.S. Army stenciled on the side. Tom's flashlight beam caught something on the far wall, photographs, dozens of them, yellowed with age. He moved closer, Sergeant at his heels. The photos showed soldiers in World War II-era uniforms. But what made Tom's breath catch was that several of the soldiers in the photos were black, at a time when the military was still segregated. His hands shaking slightly from discovery, not trauma, Tom opened the footlocker. Inside, carefully wrapped in oilcloth, was a uniform, a World War II U.S. Army uniform with sergeant's stripes. Beneath it were medals, a bronze star, a purple heart, campaign ribbons. There were also documents, letters, and what looked like a journal. Tom carefully picked up the journal, its leather cover cracked with age. Inside the front cover, in faded ink, was written, "Property of Sergeant James Washington, 761st Tank Battalion, United States Army, 1944-1945. The 761st Tank Battalion." Tom knew that name. They were the Black Panthers, one of the most decorated African-American tank units in World War II. They'd fought through France, Belgium, and Germany, facing both the Nazi enemy and racism from their own side. General Patton himself had grudgingly admitted their excellence. But what was this doing in the basement of a house owned by an elderly white woman in upstate New York? Tom brought the journal upstairs, Sergeant following with obvious satisfaction at having made the discovery. In better light, Tom began to read. The entries started in 1944, describing training at Camp Hood, Texas, the journey across the Atlantic, the landing in France. James Washington wrote eloquently about the contradiction of fighting for freedom abroad while being denied it at home. As Tom read deeper into the journal, a story emerged that gripped him. James Washington had been grievously wounded during the Battle of the Bulge, separated from his unit, and rescued by a French resistance fighter named Marie Dubois. She'd hidden him for weeks while he recovered, and they'd fallen in love. But here's where the story took an unexpected turn. Marie wasn't just French. She was half African, her father from Senegal. In 1946, after the war, she and James had tried to return to America together, but anti-miscegenation laws and violent racism had made it impossible for them to marry or live together safely in most states. The journal entries became sporadic after 1946, but there were letters tucked between pages, letters from Marie, who had eventually made it to America alone, pregnant with James's child. Letters describing how she'd changed her name to Mary Hart, passed as white, and moved to Plattsburgh, where she had distant relatives who helped her create a new identity. Tom's mind raced. Hart, Hartley, Iris Hartley. He grabbed his laptop and searched for Iris Hartley's obituary. There it was, Iris Hartley, died 2019, aged 74. That would make her birth year 1945. The timeline fit. But the obituary said she was preceded in death by her mother, Mary Hartley, in 1995. No mention of a father. Tom returned to the hidden room with Sergeant, this time bringing better lights. He began systematically going through the boxes. They contained a heartbreaking archive, letters between James and Marie Mary that spanned decades. They'd never been able to be together publicly, but they'd maintained a secret correspondence. James had eventually married another woman, had a family, but never forgot Marie. He'd sent money when he could, wrote letters filled with longing and regret. Marie had raised Iris alone, never marrying, working as a seamstress to support them. She'd told Iris that her father had died in the war, a hero whose name she never knew. In one box, Tom found photographs from the 1960s. A middle-aged black man in a suit standing next to a car with New York plates. The same man at what looked like the Plattsburgh train station. Several photos of him from a distance, as if taken secretly, watching a young woman who must have been Iris. James had been coming to Plattsburgh, watching his daughter grow up from afar, unable to acknowledge her. The final letters were from the 1980s. James, now in his 60s, writing about his wife's death, his grown children from his marriage, his grandchildren. And then a letter that made Tom stop breathing for a moment. "My dearest Marie, I am dying. The cancer is aggressive, and I have perhaps weeks. I have one last request. I want to see our daughter, just once, to tell her the truth. I want her to know that she was loved, that she came from love, that the world's hatred couldn't destroy what we had. I want to give her my medals, my journal, everything, so she knows who her father really was. A man who fought Nazis, who loved her mother, who spent every day regretting that he couldn't be the father she deserved." There was no response to that letter, but there was a newspaper clipping from 1987. "Local woman dies in car accident. Mary Hartley, aged 68. She died just weeks after James's last letter. Tom sat back on his heels, overwhelmed. Iris Hartley had never known. Her mother had died before she could reveal the truth, and James had died without ever meeting his daughter. This secret had been buried in this basement for over 30 years. But there was more. In another box, Tom found legal documents from the 1990s. Iris had apparently discovered something, maybe found a letter, or recognized something in her mother's belongings. She'd hired a private investigator. There were reports tracing James Washington, confirming his military service, his death in 1987. There were even DNA test results from 2010, confirming that Iris was the daughter of James Washington. She'd known. For the last decade of her life, Iris had known the truth. But she'd kept it secret, hidden here in this room. Why? A letter in Iris's handwriting, dated 2018, just a year before her death, provided the answer. "To whoever finds this room, know that it contains the true history of my family. My father was Sergeant James Washington, a hero who fought for a country that wouldn't let him love my mother openly. My mother was Marie Dubois, later Mary Hart, then Mary Hartley, a woman who sacrificed everything for love and faced the world alone to protect me. I thought about going public with this story many times, but my father had other children, grandchildren who knew nothing about me. My mother had relatives in France who thought she'd died in the war. What good would it do to disrupt lives, to cause pain, when all the principles are gone? So I keep this shrine, this secret room, to honor them both. Sometimes I sit here and read their letters, and I understand that I was born from a love so strong that it defied laws, prejudice, and distance. That's enough. That has to be enough." But there was one more document, a will addendum dated just months before Iris's death. "If this house should ever be sold, I hope it goes to someone who understands sacrifice and service, someone who knows what it means to fight for others. If such a person finds this room, I leave it to their discretion what to do with this history. The truth wants to be free, but sometimes secrets protect the living. Choose wisely." Tom sat in the hidden room, surrounded by a lifetime of hidden love and secret sorrow. Sergeant lay beside him, head on Tom's lap, offering the comfort he was trained to provide. The parallel wasn't lost on Tom. He too had fought for his country, had sacrificed, had come home wounded in ways both visible and invisible. He thought about Iris's words. The truth wants to be free. Over the next days, Tom immersed himself in the archive. He found films, 8-minute reels that he had digitized at a local shop. They showed James at military reunions, proud in his uniform, surrounded by fellow veterans of the 761st. There was even footage of him receiving a commendation in the 1970s when the unit was finally belatedly recognized for their heroism. There were Marie's sketches. She'd been an artist as well as a seamstress. Beautiful drawings of the French countryside, of American cityscapes, of a baby who must have been Iris. And throughout, portraits of James drawn from memory with heartbreaking detail and tenderness. Tom found recordings too, cassette tapes from the 1970s and 80s. James had recorded messages for Iris that he'd never sent. His voice, deep and warm with a slight southern accent, filled Tom's kitchen as he listened. "My dear daughter, you don't know me and likely never will, but I want you to know that not a day passes that I don't think of you. Your mother sends me pictures sometimes when it's safe. You have her beauty and I hope her courage. I see you graduated high school with honors. I'm so proud. I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have been a lot of places. But the world isn't ready for us yet. Maybe someday it will be." Tom was struggling with what to do when Sergeant again provided guidance. The dog had taken to sitting by the front window, tail wagging whenever certain people walked by. It took Tom a few days to realize Sergeant was reacting to black neighbors specifically, as if trying to tell him something. Finally, Tom understood. He looked up James Washington's other family. It wasn't hard to find them in the internet age. James's son from his marriage, Michael Washington, was a retired professor living in Washington, D.C. His daughter, Patricia Washington Clark, was a judge in Atlanta. There were grandchildren, great-grandchildren, a whole family tree that didn't know about Iris. Tom composed an email carefully, introducing himself, explaining that he'd bought a house in Plattsburgh and discovered some items that might belong to their family. He was deliberately vague, not wanting to drop such a bombshell via email. Michael called him 2 days later, curious but cautious. Tom suggested he come to Plattsburgh, that this was something better shared in person. Something in Tom's tone must have conveyed the importance, because Michael agreed, saying he could drive up that weekend with his sister. While waiting for them to arrive, Tom decorated the house more fully for Christmas. But now the decorations felt different, more meaningful. He was decorating not just his house, but Iris's house, Mary's house, a house that had sheltered a secret love story for decades. He placed candles in every window, a tradition he learned was both Victorian and military. Candles to guide loved ones home. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if this story is capturing your heart. The revelations are just beginning, and you won't want to miss what happens when the Washington family finally learns the truth. Michael and Patricia arrived on a Saturday morning, the second week of December. They were both in their 70s, dignified and cautious. Michael was tall and slim with their father's eyes. Patricia had a judge's bearing, observant and reserved. Tom welcomed them into the house, Sergeant greeting them with unusual enthusiasm, as if he recognized them somehow. Tom had set up the dining room with coffee and pastries from the local bakery. He'd also arranged some of the photos and documents from the basement on the table, including one of James in his uniform. "That's Dad," Patricia said immediately, picking up the photo with trembling hands. "But where did you get this? This isn't one I've seen before." Tom took a deep breath. "I need to show you something. It's going to be surprising, maybe shocking, but I think it's something your father would have wanted you to know eventually." He led them to the basement, Sergeant padding along. The hidden door stood open, the room beyond now well lit with temporary lighting Tom had installed. Michael and Patricia stood frozen at the threshold, taking in the photos, the footlocker, the obvious shrine to their father. "What is this?" Michael whispered. Tom handed them Iris's letter, the one explaining everything. He watched as they read, saw Patricia's eyes fill with tears, saw Michael's hands begin to shake. "We have a sister," Patricia said. "Had a sister." Tom nodded, then began to tell them everything he'd discovered. He showed them the letters between James and Marie, the photos of Iris growing up, the recordings James had made. He explained about the racism that had kept their father from acknowledging his first love and eldest daughter, the pain that had haunted him. Michael sank onto a box, overwhelmed. He used to go on trips, business trips, he said, to New York. Mom suspected he had an affair, but he always denied it. He was coming here, to see her. Patricia, ever the judge, began examining the legal documents. This is all authentic. The DNA test, the private investigator's report. My God, this woman, our sister, she knew about us but never reached out. She didn't want to hurt you, Tom said, or your families. She thought the secret should die with her. They spent hours in that basement room going through the archive. Michael wept when he heard his father's recorded voice, speaking of love and loss. Patricia stood transfixed before Marie's artwork, seeing her father through the eyes of a woman who'd loved him completely. She was beautiful, Patricia said, looking at photos of Iris from different periods of her life. She had Dad's smile. As the day wore on, they moved upstairs. Tom made lunch while Michael and Patricia processed what they'd learned. Sargent stayed close to them, offering comfort as only a good dog could. "What do we do with this?" Michael asked finally. "This story. It's not just our family's story, it's American history. The 761st, the segregation, the love between our father and Marie. It's all part of a larger narrative about who we were and who we've become." Patricia agreed. Dad was a hero, but he was also a man trapped by his time. This doesn't diminish him. It makes him more human, more complex. And Iris, we never got to know our sister, but we can honor her. They stayed the weekend, and Tom gave them Iris's house tour. They saw where she'd lived, the garden she'd tended, the life she'd built. Neighbors who remembered her shared stories. Robert Chen mentioned how she'd always been kind but seemed sad, especially during the holidays. "She spent every Christmas alone," he said. "We invited her to join us many times, but she always declined, said Christmas was for families." That broke Patricia's heart. She had family. She had us. We just didn't know. By Sunday evening, a plan had formed. The Washington family would acknowledge Iris publicly. They would donate the archive to the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, where it could be properly preserved and shared. But first, they wanted to do something more personal. "We want to have a memorial service for Iris," Michael said, "here in Plattsburgh where she lived. Invite the neighbors, anyone who knew her. Finally give her the family recognition she never had in life." Tom agreed to help organize it. They set the date for December 23rd, just before Christmas. Patricia would speak, as would Michael. They'd invite their children and grandchildren, bringing the whole Washington family to honor their lost sister. Over the next 2 weeks, Tom worked with Michael and Patricia to prepare for the memorial. They created a photo display showing James, Marie, and Iris, the complete family portrait that had never existed in life. Patricia wrote a speech about love transcending prejudice. Michael compiled his father's military records, wanting to emphasize James's heroism alongside his humanity. The story began to spread through Plattsburgh. The local newspaper picked it up. Hidden Room reveals decades-old love story and secret daughter. The Historical Society got involved, providing context about interracial relationships in the 1940s and the African-American experience in upstate New York. More discoveries emerged. The library found records of Marie Dubois entering the country in 1946, sponsored by a distant relative in Plattsburgh. They found Mary Hart's seamstress shop records, showing she'd made wedding dresses for half the town over 3 decades. They found school records of Iris, showing she'd been valedictorian, had gotten a full scholarship to college, had become a teacher herself. Tom continued decorating the house, but now with additional purpose. This would be Iris's first real family Christmas, even if posthumously. He strung lights throughout the hidden room, transforming it from a secret shrine to a celebration of love that had survived despite everything. Sargent seemed to understand the importance of what was happening. He'd taken to sleeping in the basement room, as if standing guard over the archive. During the day, he would guide visitors down to see it, tail wagging as people discovered the story. One evening, as Tom was arranging photos for the memorial display, he found something he'd missed before, a small box tucked behind others. Inside were baby clothes, hand-sewn with extraordinary detail, and a birth certificate. Iris Marie Washington, born December 24, 1945, Christmas Eve. Tom called Patricia immediately. "Your sister was born on Christmas Eve." There was a long pause. "Then the memorial on the 23rd is perfect. We'll be celebrating her birthday too." The Memorial Day arrived cold and clear. The Victorian house on Margaret Street was transformed. Every window glowed with candles. The Christmas decorations Tom had so carefully placed now seemed like birthday decorations for Iris. The hidden room was open. Lit like a chapel, the archive displayed for all to see. People began arriving early. The Washington family came in force. Michael and Patricia, their children, grandchildren, even great-grandchildren. Young cousins who'd never known about Iris looked at her photos with wonder. "She looks like Grandpa," one said, and it was true. The neighbors came too. Robert Chen brought his whole family. The woman who ran the antique shop where Tom had bought decorations revealed that many of them had originally been Iris's, sold after her death. The librarian brought copies of Iris's academic records, showing a brilliant woman who'd become a beloved teacher. The formal service was held in the living room. Patricia spoke first, her judge's composure cracking as she talked about the sister she'd never known. Iris Marie Washington Hartley was denied her father's name in life, but we give it to her now. She was our sister, James Washington's firstborn child, and we claim her as family, wholly and proudly. Michael read from their father's letters, his voice breaking on the words of love and longing. "My father was a hero in war, but he considered his greatest failure that he couldn't acknowledge his daughter. Today, we correct that failure. Iris, you were loved. You were always loved." Tom spoke too, about finding the room, about how Sargent had led him to it, about how discovering this story had helped his own healing. "I came to this house broken from war, looking for peace. Instead, I found a story about how love survives, even when the world tries to destroy it." Iris kept this secret to protect others, but secrets can be prisons. Today, we free this truth. Today, love wins. The local historical society president announced that they were placing a plaque on the house, commemorating it as a site of historical significance, the home of Iris Washington Hartley, and the secret archive of an interracial love story that defied its time. But the most moving moment came when the youngest Washington great-grandchild, a 5-year-old named Amara, stood up unprompted. "Aunt Iris," she said, addressing the photos, "we're your family. We love you. Happy birthday." There wasn't a dry eye in the house. After the formal service, the gathering became a celebration. The Washington family shared stories of James, painting a picture of a man who'd carried secret sorrow alongside public pride. Neighbors shared memories of Iris and Mary, two women who'd been part of the community fabric for decades, hiding their truth in plain sight. As evening fell, everyone gathered in the basement room. What had been a hidden shrine was now a glowing memorial. Patricia had brought something, her father's purple heart from his acknowledged service. "This belongs here," she said, placing it next to the purple heart James had received for his wounds in the Battle of the Bulge. 2 purple hearts, 2 wounds, one to his body, one to his soul. Tom had set up a small Christmas tree in the corner of the room, decorated with photos, James in uniform, Marie in her French resistance clothes, baby Iris, the family that had been separated by hatred but united by love. Michael began singing Silent Night, his voice soft but steady. Others joined in, voices filling the stone room that had held secrets for so long. The song took on new meaning, a silent night when love had to hide, a holy night when truth was finally revealed. As people began to leave, each taking a small memento, a copy of a photo, a pressed flower from Marie's collection, a recipe from Mary's kitchen, the house felt different, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted, a ghost laid to rest. The Washington family stayed longer, not wanting to leave their newly found and lost sister. They explored every corner of the house, trying to absorb decades of Iris's life in a few hours. "We're going to establish a scholarship," Patricia announced, the Iris Washington Hartley Scholarship, for students in Plattsburgh. She was a teacher. "This is how we'll honor that. And we want to maintain this room," Michael added, "not as a secret, but as a museum. People should know this story." Tom agreed to help. The house would remain his home, but the basement room would be preserved, available for historians, students, anyone who wanted to understand how love and prejudice had shaped American families. As the Washingtons finally prepared to leave, Patricia pulled Tom aside. "You know, it's not a coincidence that you found this. A veteran, someone who understands sacrifice and service, Iris somehow knew the right person would find her secret." Tom thought about that a lot over the following days. The house had chosen him, or perhaps Iris had in some cosmic way. He'd come here broken, and finding her story had helped piece him together. He'd thought he was just decorating for Christmas, but he'd actually been preparing for a homecoming, Iris's homecoming to her family. Christmas Eve arrived with a fresh snowfall. Tom had expected to spend it alone with Sargent, but the Washingtons returned all of them, bringing food and presents and filling the Victorian house with the family warmth it had always deserved. They gathered in the basement room at midnight, December 24th, becoming December 25th, marking Iris's birthday moment. Patricia lit a candle for her sister. Michael said a prayer for his father and Marie. The grandchildren sang "Happy Birthday" to their aunt they'd never meet. Tom realized this was what the house had been waiting for. Not just Christmas decorations, but Christmas meaning. Family reunited, love acknowledged, truth freed from its hiding place. Sargent, who'd started it all by finding the hidden door, sat in the middle of the room, tail wagging, looking extremely pleased with himself. He'd done what he was trained to do. He'd sensed something that needed to be found and led his human to it. But even he couldn't have known how profound his discovery would be. "You know," said Michael, "Dad would have loved this. All of us together, the whole truth known, no more secrets. This is the Christmas he always wanted, but could never have." Over the following months, the story of the hidden room spread far beyond Plattsburgh. Historians came to study the archive. Documentary filmmakers interviewed the Washington family. The Smithsonian carefully catalogued every letter, photo, and artifact. But the most meaningful responses came from other families with similar stories. Mixed-race children from the 1940s and 50s who'd been hidden or given away. Veterans who'd left children behind in France, Germany, Korea, Vietnam. Families separated by prejudice, war, and law. Tom and the Washingtons established a foundation, the Hidden Room Project, dedicated to reuniting families separated by historical injustice. They used modern DNA testing, genealogical research, and careful detective work to bring together relatives who'd never known each other existed. The first reunion they facilitated was between a Korean War veteran's family and the daughter he'd left behind in Seoul. The second connected the descendants of a black soldier and a German woman from World War II. Each story was unique, but shared common themes: love that transcended boundaries, children caught between worlds, secrets kept for survival. Sargent became the project's unofficial mascot. His picture, sitting in front of the hidden door he'd discovered, became the Foundation's logo. The story of how a service dog had uncovered a decades-old secret and reunited a family became legendary in both veteran and genealogical communities. Tom's house became a pilgrimage site of sorts. People came to see the hidden room, to understand how love had survived in secret for so long. The Victorian was now on the National Register of Historic Places, recognized not just for its architecture, but for its role in American social history. Every Christmas, the Washingtons returned to Plattsburgh. The Memorial for Iris became an annual event, growing larger each year as more people learned the story. The hidden room was decorated with lights and garland, transforming from a secret shame to a celebrated shrine. Tom had found his purpose in unexpected ways. His military service had prepared him for one kind of battle, but discovering Iris's story had enlisted him in another, the fight to reconnect families, to heal historical wounds, to prove that love could outlast hate. He still struggled with his TBI, still had bad days when the headaches were overwhelming. But now he had more than just Sargent for support. He had the extended Washington family, who'd adopted him as surely as they'd posthumously adopted Iris. He had the Hidden Room Project, giving him meaningful work. He had a house that was no longer just a shelter, but a symbol of resilience. One evening, 3 years after the initial discovery, Tom sat in the hidden room reading through the latest batch of reunion stories the Foundation had facilitated. Sargent lay at his feet, older now but still alert. The room was lit with soft Christmas lights. They kept them up year-round now, a reminder that light could exist even in hidden places. Patricia called from D.C. "We've been approved," she said, excitement in her voice. "The Library of Congress wants to create a permanent exhibit about Dad, Marie, and Iris. Their story will be part of the official American narrative." Tom smiled, looking at the photos on the wall. James in his uniform, proud and strong. Marie in her resistance clothes, fierce and beautiful. Iris at various ages, unaware of her hidden heritage but carrying it in her features, her dignity, her solitary strength. "They would be amazed," Tom said. "They would be proud," Patricia corrected. "Love won. It took 70 years, but love won." After the call, Tom and Sargent walked through the house. Every room now held some piece of the story. The living room displayed the museum plaque. The dining room held copies of the archive for researchers. The kitchen still had Mary's recipe box, though now people actually cooked from it, bringing her French-African-American fusion to life. Outside, the Christmas lights still glowed on the Victorians' trim, though it was now April. Tom had never taken them down after that first Revelation Christmas, and now they were a permanent feature. Neighbors had started leaving their lights up too, in solidarity. Margaret Street had become known as the Christmas Street, where lights stayed on all year to remember that love could illuminate even the darkest secrets. The mail brought letters daily, children doing school projects about the 761st Tank Battalion, genealogists seeking help with their own family mysteries, veterans dealing with their own secrets and traumas. Tom and Patricia answered them all, with Sergeant often providing therapy dog services to visitors who needed comfort while sharing difficult stories. One letter stood out. It was from a 95-year-old woman in France, the daughter of someone who'd known Marie Dubois during the war. She'd included a photo, Marie and James together in liberated France, smiling, unaware that the world they were about to enter wouldn't let them stay together. "My mother always wondered what happened to Marie," the letter said. "She disappeared after the war and we assumed she'd died. To know she lived, that she had a daughter, that love survived, it heals something in our family too." Tom had the photo professionally restored and enlarged. It became the centerpiece of the hidden room. James and Marie in their youth, in love, in a brief moment when anything seemed possible. It was the only photo of them together, a treasure beyond measure. The Hidden Room Project's work continued to expand. They partnered with DNA testing companies to identify potential family connections. They worked with historians to document stories of families separated by discriminatory laws. They provided counseling for the emotional aftermath of these discoveries, understanding that not all reunions were simple or easy. Some families, like the Washingtons, embraced their new members wholeheartedly. Others struggled with the implications, the family secrets, the generational trauma. The project provided support for all outcomes, recognizing that truth was valuable even when reconciliation wasn't possible. Tom often thought about Iris's letter, her decision to keep the secret, her fear of disrupting lives. He understood her choice, but he was grateful she'd preserved the archive, that she'd left the decision to whoever came next. She'd trusted that the right person would find it at the right time. She knew, Patricia said during one visit. Somehow she knew that someday the world would be ready for this story. That's why she saved everything. The fifth Christmas after the discovery was particularly special. The Washingtons had made it a family tradition to spend Christmas Eve in Plattsburgh celebrating Iris's birthday. But this year they had surprise guests. 3 families who'd been reunited through the Hidden Room Project. The house overflowed with people, languages mixing. English, Korean, Spanish, French. Children who'd grown up not knowing they had cousins played together. Elderly siblings met for the first time. The Victorian house, built in 1918, had never seen such a gathering. Tom stood in the basement room, now officially the Hidden Room Museum, watching the families interact. Sergeant, now grey-muzzled and moving slowly, still performed his duty as comfort dog, moving between groups, sensing who needed a gentle presence. "You did this, boy," Tom told him. "You found the door that opened all these doors." A young girl, the great-great-granddaughter of James Washington, approached Tom. She was holding a school report she'd written about her ancestor. "Mr. Tom," she said, "my teacher says heroes are people who do brave things. Was James a hero, even though he kept secrets?" Tom knelt to her level, thinking carefully. "Your great-great-grandfather was complicated. He was brave in war, fighting Nazis. He was brave in love, loving someone the world said he shouldn't. But he was also trapped by his time, unable to be as brave as he wanted. Heroes are human. They do their best with the circumstances they have." The girl nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Like Sergeant, he's a hero dog." "Yes," Tom agreed, scratching behind Sergeant's ears. "The best hero dog." As midnight approached on Christmas Eve, everyone gathered in the hidden room for what had become tradition. They lit candles for James, Marie, and Iris. They sang Silent Night in multiple languages. They shared stories of the reunions from the past year. Then Patricia stood to make an announcement. "The Smithsonian exhibit opens next month. It's called Love in the Time of Segregation, the Washington Dubois story. But we want to do something more. We want to create a permanent memorial here, in this room where the secret was kept and then revealed." She unveiled an artist's rendering, a beautiful bronze plaque that would be installed on the wall. It read, "In this room, love hid from hatred." James Washington and Marie Dubois, separated by unjust laws, preserved their truth here. Their daughter, Iris Washington Hartley, guarded their secret and left it for future generations to discover. May all hidden loves find light. May all separated families find reunion. May truth always, eventually, prevail. Below the text were 3 dates: James Washington, 1920–1987, Marie Dubois, Mary Hartley, 1922–1987, Iris Washington. Hartley, 1945–2019. They all died in different years, Patricia explained, but they're together now, in history, in memory, in our hearts. The room erupted in applause, tears, and embraces. The hidden room that had once held sorrow now held joy. The secret that had been a burden was now a gift, not just to the Washington family, but to everyone who'd been touched by the story. As the gathering finally wound down in the early hours of Christmas morning, Tom walked through his house one more time. Each room glowed with light and life. The Victorian that had stood empty for 3 years, that had hidden a secret for decades, was now fully alive. He thought about his own journey, the damaged veteran who'd bought a house to hide in, only to discover that hiding solved nothing. It was revelation, connection, and purpose that healed. The same house that had sheltered secrets now sheltered truth, and that truth had set so many free. Sergeant padded up to him, moving slowly but still devoted. The dog had maybe a year left, the vet said, but what a life he'd had. What a discovery he'd made, what a legacy he'd leave. "Good boy," Tom said, the 2 words inadequate for all Sergeant had done. The very best boy. Outside, snow began to fall again, coating Margaret Street in pristine white. The Christmas lights on the Victorian houses glowed through the snowfall, creating a scene of almost impossible beauty. But it wasn't impossible. It was real as the love that had survived in the hidden room, as real as the families now reunited, as real as the healing that came from bringing secrets into light. Tom's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Thank you for finding her. Thank you for finding us. Thank you for everything." He texted back, and thanks, Sergeant, he knew what we all needed to find. The story of the hidden room continued to ripple outward. Books were written about it. A film was produced. Academic papers analyzed its significance in American history. But for Tom, the most important impact was personal. He'd bought a house to hide in, and instead found a story that demanded to be shared. He decorated for Christmas and discovered that the best decorations were truth, love, and family. He'd followed his service dog into a basement corner and emerged with a purpose that would outlast his own life. Every morning, Tom and Sergeant would visit the hidden room, now bright and welcoming. Tom would read from the letters, keeping James and Marie's words alive. Sergeant would lie on the floor, perhaps sensing the spirits that had been freed there. "Love wins," Tom would sometimes say, echoing Patricia's words. "It might take decades, it might have to hide, but love wins." The Victorian house on Margaret Street had become more than a home. It was a testament to endurance, a museum of hidden history, a beacon for separated families. The Christmas decorations that had started it all remained up year-round, because the story they celebrated wasn't just a Christmas story. It was an everyday story of human resilience. Researchers estimated that thousands of families had similar hidden histories, interracial relationships that had been illegal, children who'd been hidden or given away, love that had been forced underground. The Hidden Room Project couldn't find them all, but each one they did find proved the same truth. Love was stronger than law, connection deeper than division, family more powerful than prejudice. One day, Tom received a call from a reporter doing a follow-up story. "What do you think Iris would say about all this?" the reporter asked. "About her secret being revealed, her family being reunited." Tom thought about the lonely woman who'd lived in this house, who'd discovered her true parentage too late, who'd chosen to protect others rather than claim her birthright. "I think she'd be happy," Tom said finally. "She kept the archive for a reason. She wrote that letter for a reason. She knew someone would come someday who would know what to do with the truth. She had faith in the future, even if she couldn't see it herself." "And what about you?" the reporter continued. "How has this discovery changed your life?" Tom looked at Sergeant, now sleeping in a patch of sunlight, worn out from another morning of greeting visitors to the hidden room. "I came here broken and alone," Tom said. I thought I was just buying a house, just trying to find some peace. Instead, I found a purpose. I found a family. I found proof that the things we fight for, freedom, equality, love, they're worth the sacrifice. James Washington fought Nazis in Germany and racism at home. I fought in Iraq. We both came home wounded. But the real battle, the important one, is the one for human connection, for family, for the right to love and be loved. That's the battle Iris was fighting alone in this house. Now we're all fighting it together. The reporter thanked him and hung up, but Tom's words lingered in the air. The real battle was for connection. That's what Sargent had understood when he'd pawed at that hidden door. That's what had driven him to reveal the secret. As Tom's 7th Christmas in the house approached, the Hidden Room project had facilitated over 100 family reunions. The museum in the basement had been visited by thousands. The story had become part of American civil rights history, taught in schools, discussed in universities. But the most precious development was personal. Patricia and Michael had become true family to Tom. Their children called him Uncle Tom. Their grandchildren played with Sargent's successor, a young golden retriever named Hope, trained by the same program that had trained Sargent. Hope had Sargent's gift for finding things, though so far she'd only found lost keys and missing toys. But Tom watched her carefully, wondering what she might discover, what secrets still waited in the corners of the world. Sargent had passed peacefully the previous spring, surrounded by family, both Tom's and the extended Washington clan. He was buried in the backyard of the Victorian, near Iris's beloved garden, with full military honors befitting a service dog who'd done more than his duty. His gravestone read, "Sargent, he found more than a door. He found a family." The Christmas Eve gathering that year was the largest yet. 5 reunited families attended, plus historians, journalists, neighbors, and friends. The hidden room could no longer hold everyone, so the celebration spread throughout the house. At midnight, as they'd done every year since the discovery, everyone gathered to sing Silent Night and remember those who'd been separated by history. But this year, Patricia added a new tradition. "Let's make a promise," she said, "to Iris, to all the hidden children, to all the separated families. We promise to keep looking, to keep reuniting, to keep proving that love transcends whatever barriers the world builds." Everyone raised their candles in agreement. The light filled the room, banishing shadows, revealing truth, celebrating love that had survived decades of darkness. Tom stood in his Victorian house, surrounded by chosen and discovered family, and realized that he'd found more than peace. He'd found purpose. The house that had seemed like a retreat from the world had become a door to connection, understanding, and healing. "Thank you, Sargent," he whispered to the memory of his dog. "Thank you for showing me that some doors need to be opened, some secrets need to be shared, some families need to be found." Outside, the Christmas lights glowed on Margaret Street. No longer just decorations, but declarations that love endures, that families separated by injustice can reunite, that truth will eventually emerge from even the most hidden rooms. The story that had begun with a veteran and his dog decorating for Christmas had become something larger, a testament to the power of discovery, the importance of history, and the enduring strength of love. The basement that had hidden a secret for decades now welcomed visitors daily, its door permanently open, its truth permanently free. And in that freedom, in that truth, in that reunion of a family separated by history's cruelties, was the real Christmas miracle. Not that secrets could be kept, but that they could be revealed, reconciled, and redeemed. The hidden room had become a beacon, proving that what was lost could be found, what was separated could be reunited, and what was hidden in darkness could finally, triumphantly, come to light. If this incredible true story has moved you, if you believe in the power of love to transcend time and prejudice, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with others who need to know that family can be found in the most unexpected places, that secrets can become revelations, and that sometimes a dog knows exactly what door needs to be opened. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey of discovery. And remember, the love that seems lost is often just hidden, waiting for the right moment to be found.